very much, everybody. And thank you very much for joining this session. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Emem. I run Tech Nigeria Advocates, which is part of the Global Tech Advocates Network, which is a grassroots international community of about 30,000, just over 30,000 members from around the globe, of startup founders, corporates, academics, and policymakers who are basically connected in the different ecosystems that they actually represent around the world. For me, that means running Tech Nigeria Advocates. I'm looking at how I support investors in Nigeria as well as startups in Nigeria to actually connect with, let's say, the India group. So, there's Tech India Advocates, Tech UAE Advocates, Tech Singapore Advocates, Tech Brazil Advocates. There's 30+ groups. And I'm saying this and knowing that by next week, or probably as I'm saying it, there are probably 40+ groups. You can't quite keep up with how many crop up on a day-to-day basis. So that's enough about me. So I'd like to bring Bayo to the stage from Mento Labs. There were supposed to be 4 people on this panel, and you'll notice we were in the main stage. But for various different reasons, we are now down to 1. So for anybody who's actually taking notice of what's going on with all things cryptocurrency on the continent, you notice that things are a little bit sticky, including arrests with Bitcoin, et cetera, with Binance, et cetera. So for very different reasons, we are down to Bayo from Mento Labs. Before we start, I want to ask a question. 2 things, because here it says, are stablecoins the future of Web3 in Africa? Who in the crowd knows what stablecoins are? Right, that gentleman in the back there, can you just stand up for me? What are stablecoins?
Tokens on a blockchain that are pegged to a government currency.
Thank you very much. Okay, and who in the crowd knows what Web3 is? Now, before you answer the question, let's be clear, Web 3.0 and Web 3 are not the same thing. Who in the crowd knows what Web 3 is? Go ahead. Let's see.
It's, apps that are based upon blockchain technologies that work in a distributed way.
Lovely. So, just to be clear, so to repeat what it says, so this was actually a term that was coined by Gavin Wood, right? And it refers to, as it said, the decentralized online ecosystem based on blockchain, which are distributed ledgers. And this is the other thing. Distributed ledgers or blockchain are always used interchangeably. They're not 2 different things. So, again, it refers to decentralized online ecosystem based on blockchain, which are distributed ledgers controlled communally by participants. The difference between that and Web 3.0, which was actually coined by Tim O'Reilly of O'Reilly Media. They produce all the books on anything to do with the internet. That actually describes this vision for a more intelligent and connected web based on semantic web. You may remember that was a hot thing in the noughties. Based on semantic web technologies where machines can understand the meaning of data and users can interact with the web in a more natural and intuitive way. So that's the difference. Somebody was actually arguing with me yesterday that there is no difference. I'm like, yes, there is. So I've explained that. But I wanted to establish that because I think there's always an assumption that everybody knows what we're talking about. And when it comes to Web3, there are so many terms that are thrown up. It is absolutely nuts. They're just words. Lots of words. It's like, what the heck does that mean? So I just want to do another quick introduction. So just to set the scene in terms of where we're at with Africa and stablecoins. So Africa received an estimated $117 billion on-chain value in cryptocurrencies between July 2022 and July 2022 and June 2023, which only actually accounted for 2.3% of global transactions. 2.3%, which is very small. So as a continent, we're fairly nascent in terms of our use of cryptocurrencies. However, Bitcoin share of regional transaction volume is bigger in sub-Saharan Africa than any other global region. I'll repeat that again. Bitcoin's share of regional transaction volumes is bigger in sub-Saharan Africa than any other global region. That includes the US, it includes Asia, meaning wherever the hell it is, sub-Saharan Africa are the biggest transactors of Bitcoin. I'll let that land.
Wow.
Exactly. But, however, because of the volatility of Bitcoin, there has now been this kind of shift in terms of using stablecoins. So that is now beginning to happen. And I'd just like to mention that, you know, let's bear in mind that Tether is actually the biggest stablecoin in the market with a $112 billion market cap. Again, $112 billion market cap, which is no chump change. So what we're talking about here, you know, it's something that we all need to sit up and take notice of. It's not going anywhere in a hurry. A lot of the big investment bankers now have ETFs, including Fidelity, Schwab, and one other, which I can't recall at the moment. But these are guys, you know, if the investment banks are taking it seriously, we all need to sit up and take note. That said, Bayo, can you please introduce yourself and what you actually do?
Yeah, so my name is Bayo Sodimu. I lead the engineering team at Mento Labs. And what Mento Labs does is essentially we create the infrastructure that allows anyone to kind of come along and create a stable value digital asset. And so we also create the tools to support these people who want to do this stuff. So we kind of make it easier for anyone to create digital assets. And we kind of focus on local currencies because the market is right now dominated by US-denominated digital currencies. And we do this in a safe and accessible manner. So we have things like decentralized safeguards, such as, you know, circuit breakers that are, in the traditional stock markets, they have circuit breakers. And so we've built this on-chain in a decentralized way to enable anyone to, launch stablecoins in a safe manner. So that's what we do at Mento Labs.
Okay. So if anybody's wondering what on-chain means, it just means on the blockchain as opposed to off-chain, which means not on the blockchain. That's all that means. Again, the terms are real. So let's get into it. Now, one of the things you mentioned, you were talking about currencies and being able to actually trade in local currencies. Now, the fact that, most African countries trade in USD. A number of African currencies have experienced significant devaluation in the last 12 to 18 months. It's been crazy. We as Nigerians have felt this pain.
Yeah.
Let's not talk about how bad it's been. But this has not just been Nigeria, this has been in Ghana, Egypt, etc. And they've also struggled with rising inflation. Is there a case to be made for stablecoins as a mitigant against uncertainty and instability of domestic macroeconomics?
It's a bit of a loaded question.
I've got to ask the question.
But I think stablecoins can help, maybe potentially mitigate them, because they give you a potential alternative to use than the typical fiat version. But I'm not sure about completely mitigating the instability. I can't 100% say that.
Because when we think about the reason why, why there are so many people on the continent that are actually using it, it is literally because of this issue here, right? So it is the devaluation of the currency. It is the fact that inflation is so high. So that's how, ordinary citizens are seeing it. So we kind of think about it, go, well, so is it a potential?
Yeah, but what we see at Mento Labs is that, when we built one of the first stablecoins, which was a US-denominated stablecoins, one of the apps that integrated that, we found that users in some countries were using this to get access to US for their savings, to kind of get away from the currency devaluation and then cashing out back into the local currency to kind of, maintain the value of their savings. So that's one of the things that we did see. So whilst the currency devaluation still does happen, stablecoins make it easier for countries who maybe might not have access to other currencies that might, protect their savings a bit more.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So there's one thing that's kind of been bugging me. So I keep thinking about the Africa free continental trade area. I'm like, did the Web3 community miss an opportunity here? Because one of the issues we have on the continent is the ability to actually be able to trade between country and country because of the currency differences. And Afrexim have built another, the PAP system. If anybody is wondering what that is, that's the payment and settlement system that they actually have to enable cross-border trade in local currencies. Why did the Web3 community not engage? I mean, there was an opportunity here.
Yeah, so Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's maybe why not, but it's maybe the tools are there and the building blocks are there, but maybe the knowledge isn't there for people to kind of take advantage of that. And so even at Mento Labs, so our, platform does have a, what's built in, it's called a Mento Asset Exchange. So it does enable users to go easily from local currencies, via the platform. But it's just about, whether the users know about this stuff and how, integrated they are with existing tools. Because we just provide the base layer. And so it takes, third parties with, rights to operate in certain countries to integrate that. And then they gain access to it. So I don't think it was missed, but it's more there's a challenge in, getting this integrated in the normal systems.
Yeah, I agree with you that it's a challenge there. And also you're talking about users not knowing, and I'm like, okay, so we can assume, I think we can be fairly comfortable in assuming that the likes of Afrix and the nature of what they are, I mean, they're an import and export bank. The likeliness of them having, a very good understanding of stablecoins, or even just the concept of Web3 itself, that, we think we can fairly confident in saying it won't necessarily be that deep in terms of their understanding, which is why, for me, I'm like, shouldn't that engagement should have come from the Web3 community, whether it's the Web3 community on the continent, to initiate a conversation.
Yeah.
So that knowledge could actually be learned, so that conversation could actually happen. Because I think if we're talking about the future, a lot of this is going to come down to the Web3 community that is on ground to start to engage, whether they're policymakers, whether they're bankers, whoever the heck it is, DFIs, whoever. That's the thing that has to happen, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think in the whole Web3 blockchain space, first of all, there are some barriers to even just understanding this stuff. And a lot of people have really been focused on, building these innovations. So they're more not really focused on the education and speaking to regulators and speaking to, policymakers. They're focusing on, building. And that's what we've seen in the last couple of years. But whilst it's been bad because it's been hard for others to, integrate and make use of what, people have been building, it's been great because we've built so much, and you see very different use cases, such as, we can now use the stablecoins that we built for, local loans. We can use them for remittances. There's a thing called streaming, funds, which doesn't really exist with, normal fiat currency. So whilst it's good that, the innovation has been happening without that conversation, I think it's been beneficial. So when the conversation does happen, all bases have been covered because we've been iterating on this for the last couple of years. So we're ready to kind of integrate. So I don't think it's necessarily a big issue that these conversations haven't been happening. But I think when they do start happening, and when, the Web3 community does start reaching out, or the other way around, there'll be more to talk about and more that we can provide as, proof to show that this stuff does actually work and make a difference.
I just need to go back to something you said, streaming, what did you say?
Yeah, so what we've seen is with the blockchain, it's possible for, let's say you're getting paid a salary over like a year. With the blockchain, it's possible for you to receive that salary, paid out every second, which is kind of different from, traditional systems where you get the salary paid on, 1 month and month-to-month basis. And it's all automated as well, so you can see your salary in this decentralized, pot on the blockchain, and you can see it's going to be coming to you, and you can claim it whenever you want. So that doesn't really exist in the normal systems, and this is enabled by, blockchain technologies.
Okay, so you can actually see it like on a second-by-second basis.
Literally,
accumulating.
yeah, literally.
Well, this is an interesting concept. So if any of you are out there, thinking about alternative ways to, pay your staff as founders, there is an option for you. One of the things you mentioned is education. And for me, a lot of that education is about language.
Yeah.
And as I've already alluded to, one of the things, with Web3 is that there are so many terms. And they're very quite technical. And I'm like, oh, it's a dude fest. It's a bunch of, dudes, who are very intelligent, and it's great. But for the average individual, much less me thinking, okay, so Baba Sheriff in Jagawa State or in Sokoto State, like, these are terms, that we need to find ways of simplifying for the average user. So for them, it becomes part of their norm, part of their vernacular.
Yeah.
Again, how do you, see that happening? Because that education process really needs to kind of be tackled.
Yeah, it's a tough one because one of the reasons why, it's so complicated, because, it is complicated. There's no hiding that. And so I think there's extra effort that needs to be gone in from, maybe teams like ours who are building the infrastructure to put out the knowledge to simplify and make what we're building easier to understand. And because we're pretty much, building the building blocks for others to use, it's a bit different, because our, information isn't really, targeted at the end consumer. And so we can put out that knowledge, and then maybe third parties who integrate our software can, further take that and make it easier. But there's even a bigger problem. It's not just about the knowledge and, and the terms. It's more about, the accessibility and the user experience of these systems. So if anyone's used like a crypto wallet or anything on the blockchain, you need to have this, 12 or 24, word recovery phrase. Then if I want to send money to you, I have to know, your address.
Yep.
And so things like those block, normal users from understanding and even using, what we've built. And so there are companies who are, innovating on that, who are creating simpler solutions where I wouldn't even need to explain to you, what this or that term means, just because the way we're building these things resembles the existing systems that people are already using. So then the need for that education is a bit less.
Okay. Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense, because it's, a little bit when you think about normal web, just when you think about, things like icons are basically created to resemble things that you will see in day-to-day life, and that connection between the two, it's like, oh, that thing, I know that's why it's intuitive, because I know what that thing is for, and this is exactly what needs to happen with Web3. How many of you in here actually, have actually traded cryptocurrencies, or whether it be stablecoins or any other kind of coins? Any of you in here? Okay. It would be interesting to find out your experiences of actually using, some of these wallets. So, because I use Binance, and I'm like, I have to cough a couple of times, because if you haven't used it for a while, you can't remember what the heck, how to actually navigate the platform. So, would any of you like to share your experiences of actually using some of these wallets and some of the platforms to either trade cryptocurrencies or to buy NFTs, whatever it is? Any of you would like to share your experience? Because these are the sort of things that, for me, I think, Bayo, you guys need to be talking to, your clients and users about, because it's a full-on thing. Any of you? Please, go ahead.
I think it's extremely difficult. Every single time, like you said, if you haven't used it for a while, you just have to remember. So buying is a problem. Selling is a bigger problem as well, because you don't even know who's at the other end.
Yeah.
And especially when you're paying into another account. So it's so that's why I know it's not for the masses at all, and I think you have to understand the psychology before you apply the technology. So what works in Africa or in certain African countries won't work in other countries as well. So the reason why the business case is always going to be very different. And I think I'm from Nigeria. In Nigeria, I think it's 0.12% that are actually trading in cryptocurrency. So you have to ask, what are they actually doing as well? Because it's not commercial.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. And when we talk about the future of Web3 in Africa, users in Western countries are going to use these things very differently. We already have our financial systems that work. We already have the innovation savings accounts and all of this stuff. But where, stablecoins can really make a difference in, emerging markets, and not even just Africa, is that, individuals and countries who don't necessarily have these building blocks and who don't have these financial services or even don't have access to banks can make use of, stablecoins, and then whoever is building and integrating with them can create simple experiences. So maybe I might be using stablecoins because I want to capitalize off of the increase in, Bitcoin or something like that. But someone in these countries might use stablecoins because they don't have access to any other means of payments to either get a local loan or to buy some bread. So I think there's very different use cases, and there definitely is this gap in, ease of use. Everyone sees that, and there are definitely companies who are working on that. As an example, my team, Mento Labs, came from the Celo ecosystem, and one of the great things Celo did is that, they built this social connect thing where you could map a social identifier off-chain, such as my Twitter account, my phone number, or my Facebook name, to make it easier for me to send some dollars or some cryptocurrency to my friend. They also have things where if you've used any other blockchain, you have to pay for transaction fees in that blockchain's native token. So if I want to do anything on Ethereum, I need to pay for it in Ether. And if anyone has used Ethereum, you know how expensive the transaction fees can get. But Celo, the transaction fees are sub-cent, which makes it easier for someone who doesn't have the money to pay $5 for a $10 transfer. And one other huge interesting feature of the Mento stables is that you can pay for gas fees in the Mento stables. So it means that in my wallet on Celo, if I have some Mento CUSD or some Mento Kenyan shilling, I can send it without having to acquire another stable currency. So it makes it quite interesting, and the use cases are very different from others in other countries who have existing systems.
Please, go ahead.
The game changer, I think, for these coins would be if you have a M-Pesa type experience, Pan-African, working with USSD on a phone.
Yeah.
How close is that? How close is that?
Yeah, that made a lot of difference. But yeah, I would say we're there. I don't want to keep shilling what Mento Labs are doing, but we kind of have that. So we have what we call an asset exchange. So the core of our protocol is a virtual AMM. So anyone can any stablecoin that's been created on our platform is easily tradable with other stablecoins on our platform. So you talk about M-Pesa, we launched a Kenyan shilling, and so we also have the West African franc as well. And so people can go between these using the Mento protocol. And so our aim is to kind of enable partners to integrate what we've built, and then the more partners integrate that, the easier it is to get this cross-asset exchange.
But how do you go from cash to coin?
Okay, so that's the on-ramping question. So that's another tough question because of certain gates, because those require like licenses and whatnot in the local country. So what we do to support that is that we build the tooling, because you as a on-ramp provider with a licensing might not necessarily understand how to go from cash to blockchain and to cryptocurrency and then to one of the stables. So we provide that as an open source tool that you can integrate with your systems, but then I guess as a third party it's up to you to kind of acquire the licenses and whatnot to be able to operate in the country. So I'm just a builder. I don't really know too much about what it means, but we will help and support partners who want to do that stuff.
Sorry, if anybody wants to ask any questions, just put your hands up and please go ahead and do so. I do like to engage, as you probably tell, the crowd. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask Bayo what his thoughts were on the likes of Opera MiniPay integrating with Celo and the role of kind of incumbents who have a community who the Web3 community can serve.
Yeah, sorry, my name is pronounced Bayo, by the way. It's okay. But yeah, I think it's great because they are operating and they have the user base, and so they don't necessarily need to understand or integrate or build the infrastructure. We provide that, and then they can integrate our stables. So actually, Opera and MiniPay have integrated one of our stables to CUSD, and so we've seen a lot of growth in that, and we support them in many ways to actually enable the whatever they're doing. So I think it's great, and like I said, Celo has some killer features that make stablecoins very usable in countries where they're operating in.
I do want to quickly ask, are there any regulators in the room at all? Anybody in the regulatory space? Because we know there's no way we can actually talk about stablecoins without talking about regulators. That has been part of some of the challenges I've mentioned already. So, now, couple of things. Now, there are 10 or so countries on the continent that have actually placed an outright ban, right, on the use of cryptocurrencies, including Morocco, Lesotho, Ghana, and Tunisia. And we've seen with Nigerian Central Bank, they've also mandated that, banks, they've actually mandated that banks shut down any user's accounts who are trading in cryptocurrencies. And there was a recent issue with Kuda Bank and them not being allowed to take on board new customers until they kind of sorted out an issue around that. So, money laundering is one of the issues that's been raised. So money laundering, tax evasion, fraud, illicit activities, etc. And that is justifiable. However, for me, I'm like, is it about that? Or is it about the fact that they can't control or govern what goes on when it comes to anything to do with Web3 and stablecoins? Because that's the whole point. It's decentralized. You can't control it. It's not centralized.
Yeah, so it's definitely not centralized, and we build our systems in a way that everyone can have a say. But I think that's the key thing. Everyone can have a say. So, with the decentralization comes decentralized governance. So with us, we've recently launched a token, and that token allows you to have a say in the decisions that get made, and the development of the protocol, and like what actual stablecoins get launched and the parameters of the protocol. So I don't think the fact that you can't control it is really much of the real issue. It's because you can have a say. You just can't control the whole thing. So maybe that's the thing. But anyone can have a say in these things. So I don't think that's the main issue.
So this goes back to engagement and education, right?
Yeah.
So this is what this is really about.
Yeah.
Because what it is a fear of what you don't understand.
Yeah.
But actually, if there was engagement with the Web3 community and understanding of what it is, that might totally change it. Because for me, I think that's also going to be a game changer. When that happens, that understanding, that's when we can start to talk about stablecoins in the future of Web3 in Africa.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm quite on the line, because I don't think that there needs to be this, you need to understand what Web3 is. I feel like it's a weird thing to kind of pitch to people, because when Facebook does an update, they don't tell you need to understand what JavaScript or the latest TypeScript version is, right? You just use Facebook with the latest updates. I think what we really need is, integrators who are going to integrate these tooling into their systems to just make them the same as what they use. So you don't need to worry about teaching people. Then you can teach them that, okay, you can have a say and you can vote on these things, but then with decentralized governance you have delegation as well as normal democracy. So let's say I don't want to have a say, but I trust what Bayo says. Let me delegate my votes to Bayo so he can make the decision for me. So you do get things like that in these decentralized systems. So I think education, for me personally, it shouldn't be the main pusher. It's more that make these things comparable to the systems that we already use, and then you don't need to worry about educating people too much.
Cool. So once the analogy is actually made and understood, it's like, oh, okay.
Exactly.
It's not that different.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. We've got 2 minutes, so we'll take both your questions and then Bayo, you can answer.
Hi, my name is Melanie. I'm the CEO of a fintech called Melanie Capital. I just wanted to comment on what you said on the regulator and also ask questions on that. So we're based in Kenya, and crypto is kind of a very scary monster for the regulators. We're building a token to actually do what we do in Web2, which is trading carbon, and now tokenize carbon credits on Web3 to give it access to more businesses. And we started to engage with the regulator last year, like 14 months ago. So it's been a very, very long journey. The Capital Market Authority in Kenya has a sandbox that we've applied for, and they are actually they're building the policy based on what we are doing. It's a very slow process, and my question is what can let's say like blockchain communities like yours also do to lobby? I know that it's a bit contradictory to the philosophy of blockchain in general, which is like decentralized and avoids the government in general. But like now for us who are building solutions, it's very, very hard to explain. Like there's been so much pushback by the central bank, by other regulators in our country, and it's just one country. When you look at Africa, it's 54, 56 countries. So from a business standpoint, it's really unrealistic to go and try to pitch to investors to build a token where you have to spend 12 or 14 months to convince one regulator per one regulator. So what do you think we can do more as blockchain community to lobby against that?
So although I have been against, education, pushing that on the consumer, I think education for the regulators is important. So I think what you're doing is great. I think they need to understand the systems that we're building. They need to understand the safety mechanisms we're building into the system. And us as a blockchain community, we need to take that safety, we need to put that first. It can't be an afterthought, because like what we're building, people will be depending on this. So we can't slap on security afterwards. This needs to be built into our mindsets as developers and team members. It needs to be built into the protocol itself and the code. So I think that's the important thing, because that's where regulators really care. Like, how is this going to affect the average Joe when this does go wrong? So if they understand that you've put all of these mechanisms in place and it's like a whole process, I think that will be beneficial. And things that I've seen, I've done my rounds in other teams in the blockchain space, and I don't think everyone takes this as seriously as others. And I think if people start taking it seriously, and if we start, sharing practices and doing more speaking to regulators, like come in, see what we're building, see how we're building it, maybe that will help. But like I said, I'm not a regulator, so I can't really, say what they would think or what they would do. But from my perspective, I think that is what really makes sense.
Just one last one. Sorry, can we just quickly take your question?
Hi, Robbie Van Adibay, serial entrepreneur, chair of multiple early-stage tech companies. Observation and a question. So observation is that crypto and associated technologies are in the very earliest stages of adoption, right? If you remember a thing called a CompuServe email ID, that was about as usable as your average crypto wallet, right? So we are in the phase where all the ease of use things need to be created, and that's the opportunity. The question is, currently, what is the leading coin for microtransactions in that part of the world? Is there one?
I can't say off the top of my head, but there are various dashboards that could show, market cap and, volume and, transactions. But I think what's interesting to see is that, our stablecoins have increased, in the transactions just because of, the features of our stablecoins, i.e. they can be used as gas currencies, for sending, so it makes them easy to use. But then also with integration with third parties such as Opera MiniPay and Valora, who have simplified the ease of use for the average user, it makes ours easier to use than others. Not just shilling, but you can probably look at the data and see what it says. But from my opinion, that's definitely killer features and ease of use make our stablecoins easier to use and definitely dominate the transactions.
Okay, unfortunately, we have run out of time. So I'd just like to close by just echoing what this gentleman over here said about the fact that cryptocurrencies are definitely are in its infancy of adoption. We have to kind of think Web 1.0. We're in 1990 to kind of 1993, 1994 phase. That's where we're at. And with that in mind, I would also like to echo something that that Agosha from Echo VC said yesterday during the Venture Day. He said, Africa is a continent of current and future experiments. That's exactly what this is. We have got a long way to go to figure out the end game of this experience. So the next 20 years of our journey is going to be a very interesting one, but there is an opportunity for Africa to actually somehow, somewhere along the way, be actually at the forefront of the use of stablecoins in order for them to be the future of our use of Web3 across the continent. Thank you very much, everybody, for your time.